guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we've got ourselves another of these Plannosaurus models, and this is one that I've had sitting here for quite a little while, and I just did not get to, and I'm finally now going to get to this one. We have the Ankylosaurus, and I don't really know what's taken me so long to get around to putting this one together and reviewing it for you guys. Maybe it's just that I'm not super psyched about these figures, even though I continue to collect them, because now I'm so far into the line, I feel like it would be stupid to not keep collecting them, but they're not ever something that I'm beyond hyped to see when I get them, but they're still pretty fun, I will give them that. But as far as the Ankylosaurus packaging goes, you've got a really cool image of the Ankylosaurus here on the front of the box, smashing something with its tail over here, and then you have a sneak peek of the figure itself. And of course, you're going to have the same sort of stuff that you usually find on the sides of the box and everything for the Plannosaurus line. The information here on the underside, and then again some more images on the other side. And then once we open the box, and we turn it around here, you can see the inside is filled with all kinds of wonderful parts, whether it be the skeletal structure of our Ankylosaurus or the, more living body parts of the dinosaur. So I'm going to go ahead, pop all of this stuff out and open it up. I'm going to build the skeleton, and we'll check that out in just a minute. So we've got the skeleton built, and you can see it definitely looks pretty cool. I would say it's fairly stable overall, feels like the usual pretty decent quality of the skeletons. I always feel like the skeletons of these Plannosaurus figures are consistently a higher quality than the dinosaur is once you put the skin on. And I can understand, it's going to be a little bit iffy once you do that. The skin isn't going to stay on perfect and everything, but I just always feel like even the material used feels like a higher quality. But you can see when you get nice and close, again, it sports all of the incredible detail you like to see on these figures. It has a very nice, very highly detailed appearance, and on top of that, sports articulation, so you can move the head around a little bit. As you can see, you can get a little bit of a left and right turn, also up and down, and it can swivel. Oh, nope, it popped off, but it can definitely swivel. There you go, you can see it. And it also has an articulated jaw, which can open really wide if you want it to. But again, that helps as far as a display goes. You have the articulation in the neck, which can go down and up. I don't know if it can really do left and right, kind of a little bit, but not a whole lot as far as that goes. You also have shoulder articulation, forward and back and out away from the body a little bit, as well as elbow articulation, which you can see right there. Works really nicely. On top of that, you've also got the articulation in the hip, like you would expect to have. Same type of, same style of articulation as what we saw on the front leg there, where you can kind of move it in and out a little bit, but also forward and back. And then again with the knee, just like we saw on the front leg. And then as you move back into the tail, you also have the ability to move the tail left and right and up and down. In this joint specifically, up and down a little bit, but then you also have this spot as well, which is again more of an up and down articulated joint. I don't think we have the ability, nothing really going on with the club tail, and you can see you can only really get it to go left and right a little bit. It would have been nicer to have a little bit more posability in the tail, so you can kind of curve the tail or something, even like if it somehow were a wired tail, just to be able to get that more classic Ankylosaurus defending itself sort of pose. But it still works pretty nicely, not too shabby, I will say. So, as always, the next step would be to put the skin on the figure, and we'll check that out then from there. So there we go, we've got the Ankylosaurus now fully put together, and would you believe it, I applied every sticker that we have for this figure, and I don't hate them because, well, I'm not a big fan of them, but I don't absolutely despise them like I have with other releases, because this time, we don't really have much when it comes to the stickers. The only thing we really have are the eyes, which do look pretty bad, and the tongue here for the inside of the mouth, which looks okay, that doesn't look too bad. But that's really about it when it comes to the stickers. There's no patterning or anything like that for the Ankylosaurus, so not much needed as far as that goes. But I think the figure looks pretty cool, honestly. It's probably, I would say, one of my favorites from this line as a whole. Once it's actually put together, I just feel like it doesn't look quite as awkward as some of the others have. I don't really know what it is about it. Maybe it's because it doesn't need stickers or anything, and the coloration still looks pretty decent for it, that it actually looks pretty darn nice as a whole. So let's go ahead, jump straight to a closer look, and we'll check it out from there. So as you can see, starting up here at the head sculpt of the Ankylosaurus, it looks pretty decent. We can see the nostrils right there. You can also see, again, the skin texture looks fairly nice, especially when you look up here on the top of the head and you see the very nice kind of armored style scales that you have going on. Everything looks fairly decent as a whole. Obviously, you do see seams and everything because the figure's kind of like one of those snap together sort of figures. So you're going to see seams no matter what, unless you really go through the entire figure and putty them all up and, you know, hide them. But I feel like that's a lot of work for a figure that's not that great to begin with. But you do still have an articulated jaw, which is nice for the figure. You can again see the inside of the mouth there with the tongue and everything. Not really a whole lot going on as far as detailing goes, but it's pretty cool to have an Ankylosaurus with an articulated jaw. Once you close the jaw, though, you can still see the very obvious seams for the figure. And I will say, something that happens with a lot of these Plannosaurus figures is I always have that one area that I have trouble with when it comes to actually applying the piece to it. This time it was the lower jaw. I had such a hard time getting that connected, and still it's not really staying connected very well. So far right now for the review it's been okay, but it was popping off like crazy previously. You also still have a little articulation here in the head area of the dinosaur, and of course you also have articulation right here in the neck, so that allows you to kind of move the head up and down, left and right as well. Not a whole lot when it comes to the range of movement, but fairly decent. As you move back, you can see the scale detail continues to look really quite nice. You've got some nice detail within the armored scoots running along the back of the dinosaur, but it's not quite as nice as you see when it comes to the scale detail. Like, it's present, but it's a little muted at the same time. As you continue to move back, you have this darker brown for the upper side of the dinosaur, and then you have this kind of lighter variation of like a brown or like a tan, more like a brown, like a light brown for the underside of the Ankylosaurus. And then as you move down into the arms, you do still have articulation here in the front leg, as well as the elbow, which still works pretty decent. Again, you don't have quite as much of a range of movement as you had when it was in the skeleton phase, but it's not terrible. You can see the feet look fairly decent, and again, the nails are sculpted out there, of course not painted. As you move along, you see the lighter tone kind of extend up into the stomach a little bit right there. You've also got some skin wrinkles in front of the rear leg. Again, some very nice looking skin texture here for the underside of the Ankylosaurus as well. And then we continue to have that very heavily armored look for the upper side of the Ankylosaurus moving out. As you lead down into the rear leg, you've got a few more kind of skin wrinkles back there. Also a nice big muscular look to the rear leg. As you move down, you again also still have the articulation of the hip area as well as the knee, which is pretty fun to still have that articulation. And then you again have a really nice looking foot sculpt here for the rear leg. You've got the nails again sculpted out, but still unpainted. And you could of course paint them yourself if you really want them to be painted. It's not that big of a deal, I would imagine, though. And then you have the tail, which can still articulate up and down and a little bit left and right, which you can see. Not really any way to curve the tail, so I mean you're kind of limited when it comes to the posability there, but I feel like it works pretty decently. And then as you lead out, you continue to have the same coloration again with the lighter tone for the underside, darker tone for the upper side. Very nice looking detail though, especially as you lead out into the club tail. You can see that as well. Looks really nice, really crisp. Overall, I feel like these figures would look super cool if, or at least not all of them, but most of them would look really cool if you gave them a nice fresh coat of paint and actually gave them a more highly detailed paint job. I feel like they would look a whole lot better than they do in these original colors. Not that this one particularly looks bad, because I don't expect a lot of flashiness on an Ankylosaurus. I pretty much expect it to look like this. This one could even be just enhanced a little bit by just dry brushing some detail out on it. That could just honestly amp up the entire thing a lot, but again, we still have the eye, which doesn't look absolutely awful, but it's still very obvious that it's a sticker. But as a whole, again, this one's pretty fun. I would actually say, like I mentioned earlier, it's probably one of my favorites from the line so far, which is kind of funny because I spent so long not getting to this one. It's humorous to me that it ended up being one of my favorites. And then you have the base, which is pretty fun, but nothing really all that special. You also have the Ankylosaurus name you could put on it if you choose to. But as far as a size, actually, let's get the base out of here and just get a size for the figure on its own. As far as a length goes, you are looking at about 8 inches or 20 centimeters, somewhere in that vicinity. And then for a height, the highest point would be the back, about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, and maybe a little bit over for the tail, but of course that's up to you. You could make it go higher and stuff as well, or even down lower. So I guess that's really up to you and your preference. But as far as a size comparison goes, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Ankylosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect a Human Being next to our Ankylosaurus from Bandai for the Plannosaurus series. And you can see it's fairly small, just like these Plannosaurus models always are. They're never all that large, and you can see this one sits pretty much right there in the size range you would expect it to be. First of all, we have the recent Howl on Good Euoplocephalus here next to our Ankylosaurus to help give you an idea of the fact that they're kind of similar in size with the Ankylosaurus, just being a little bit bigger. We've also got the Edmontonia, which again, very similar in size with the Ankylosaurus, just being a little bit longer. And then when it comes to a fairly similarly sized Ankylosaurus, we have the Mojo Fun version, which you can see is very, very similar in size to this one. And then just in case you wanted one final comparison, we have a Mattel Ankylosaurus stepping in here for a comparison as well next to our Plannosaurus release. And then if you want just one final comparison as far as Ankylosaurus figures go, we've got the Mattel version here stepping in next to the Bandai version, again the Plannosaurus release of the Ankylosaurus. Obviously a pretty big difference in size here. So this Bandai Plannosaurus Ankylosaurus is actually kind of fun. You know, it's probably, like I mentioned a few times, one of my favorites, if not my favorite, from the line as a whole. I think the Stegosaurus might be leading the charge as far as these figures go for me personally, but this Ankylosaurus, I would say, is either number one or a close second to the Stegosaurus. But the sculpt is great on this. I think it's really highly detailed and very nicely done overall. Of course, there are a few areas that could be a little bit better, like the detailing within the armored scoots and stuff and the spikes on the dinosaur. It looks okay. Those areas are just a little muted, but for the most part, the scale detail looks really good. We've got some very nice skin wrinkles and folds and stuff throughout. One thing that, of course, will bother some are the seams, because this is a figure that you kind of have to just snap together, so that's always something that could be a problem for some collectors. And of course, the fact that it does sport articulation means you are kind of littered with articulated joints throughout as well, which may also be an issue, but I love articulated figures, so the articulation of this is actually super cool to me. And it also does have some nice articulation as a whole, and for the most part, it works pretty nicely. I haven't had any issues as far as the articulation goes on this one when it comes to pieces popping off, which I have had issues like that in the past with others. For the most part, the pieces stay on pretty nicely, unless you try to do some kind of crazy thing like twist the head upside down like I had tried earlier. But the coloration of this one as well looks pretty nice. It's natural as a whole, definitely the type of coloration I might expect to see, obviously in the most basic form, because there would be more color added to it I would expect on a living version of an Ankylosaurus. But when it comes to a figure like this, the coloration of this is bland, and I feel like would definitely help the dinosaur to camouflage pretty nicely. It's absolutely the type of coloration I personally would expect to see on a species like this, and I really like it. The fact that we don't have to put stickers on it or anything for patterning is really nice for this one, because I think it helps to give the entire figure a little bit of a higher quality feel rather than the cheapness that you'll see on some of the others when it comes to the use of the stickers. We do have stickers on this, like the eyes and the tongue, but that's really about it. So having such a minor area of including the stickers is a nice touch, though I do wish that in the future maybe they would just start to include those things on the figures, like eye paint and stuff like that, or maybe just include paint with the figure and then give you the opportunity to paint it. I don't know. One way or another, it's a pretty fun figure, definitely a fun Plannosaurus release, and has kind of pulled me back into these figures a little bit, I think. I was starting to kind of drift away from them, but this Ankylosaurus is actually so nice. I feel like it's almost rejuvenated my enjoyment in these figures. So if you are interested in this, I will do my best to try to find a link to include in the description for you to somewhere you can purchase this. I don't think it's available on Big Bad Toy Store anymore, so I'll try AliExpress or somewhere like that. Maybe Amazon might have it. One way or another, if you can pick it up, definitely grab it. And of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.